Welcome to Dental Business RX. Practice success in 30 minutes or less.
Thank you for calling ABC Dental.
Being in a service business, it's no secret that staffing and staff performance are critical components to the success of your practice. And if we were to isolate the primary issues with relation to staff, they usually boil down to three things. One, the inability to find or hire good staff. Two, hiring and or keeping non-performing staff members. And three, the inability to properly train team members, no training materials or systems. And the funny thing about number three, inability to train, is it can make someone appear to be an unacceptable staff member. In other words, there's a high probability that some of the staff you've lost over the years and wrote off to being a bad fit might have actually made it and become a productive team member if you had had proper training materials and systems. So having the ability to train, in my mind, is the most important component and solution to staff-related issues. It's also the toughest to debug or to implement. I mean, think about it for a minute. Have you ever lost a long-term team member? Sure, you generally thought, how am I going to replace them? But what was the major worry? Finding someone new or losing all of that training and experiential track of this departing employee? You know, how on earth are you going to transfer all that information experience to a new team member? And this is where you get into the high cost of employee turnover and where you run into doctors and managers potentially keeping non-performing employees because of the horror associated with that turnover. So the way around this, or at least the way to lower the cost of turnover and more importantly, create an efficient, productive practice and potentially improve patient care, is to have extensive training systems and materials for your practice. And there's the pickle. When I discuss this with a new client, and the effort, or at least the perceived effort involved with creating these materials, you can see an immediate apathy set in. Sure, I can help with video training like DDS Success. I'll put a link to it in the episode webpage, and seminar and course training here at MGE. And while that will definitely impact and lessen the amount of stuff that the doctor would have to generate for their own practice, I can never drill down and create the policies and systems specific to your office. I can make a policy on a scheduling system, but you're minimally, you're going to have to contour it to your practice. I can't make a policy on office hours because every practice's office hours are different. So when I mention all the policy checklists and procedures that have to be internally created to really get a handle on this area and be able to stably scale, I run into, complete overwhelm. What's the responses I get? When am I going to have time to do this? I can barely keep up with what I'm doing now. I can't write. And look, I understand. I've written a bunch in my career and it takes time. So we have a problem. You need at least some training materials specific to your business that cannot be outsourced, but you don't have time to do it or you feel like you don't have the skill set. So what should you do? Well, what if I were to tell you that there's an immediately accessible, cheap AI, artificial intelligence solution, less than $50 a month, that you could use to create much of these materials, saving yourself at least 75% of the time involved in doing so. And again, most importantly, improve your practice profitability, management growth, efficiency, and all of that good stuff. And these are solutions that I use and many of our clients use every single day. If I said that, would that be something you'd be interested in? Well, if that's the case, that's what I'm going to be talking about in this week's podcast. I'm going to be talking about what these solutions are, how to use them, and how to get them implemented in your practice. My name is Jeff Bloomberg, and I'm your host. And if you've listened to the podcast for any length of time, you know that I tend to focus on things that you can apply right now, whether it's leadership, management, or day-to-day operational concepts. I want you to be able to walk away from every episode with at least one idea, hopefully more if I've done my job, that you could put into action right away to improve your practice. And I've avoided the subject of AI up to now because while there's a ton of new things in dentistry with regards to AI, from diagnostics to imaging, treatment planning, robotics, practice analytics, etc., there wasn't any particular application that I felt was worth an episode. Sure, it's all very cool. For instance, using AI to catch things that, diagnostic issues that a new associate just out of school might miss on imaging, right? We have clients who use this. But if I discussed it, what would I do? Isn't that cool? There's not much I can get into about it. I'm not a clinician and I'm not a technology reviewer. So I knew there would come a time where, AI and the podcast would intersect. I just didn't want to touch on the subject unless it was something that contributed to the podcast's original mission. So here we are. So what are these AI solutions I'm referring to, and how do you use them to write policy for your practice and potentially contribute to creating individualized training systems? Well, let me explain them with a real-time example, and I'll give you the solutions as I do it. So let's say you take an area of the practice you're having trouble with. Maybe it's answering the phones. You're unhappy with your new patient conversion. It's at 30%. You get a bunch of new patient calls or marketing calls, and your front desk is just not very good at converting these. All right, so we're going to have to train people on how to do this. So let's say your office manager is going to do it, and they sit down with your receptionist, your scheduler, and your financial coordinator, and they're going to have a meeting and train everybody and show them how to do it because your OM really knows how to do this well. If your OM were answering the phone, the conversion rate would be 80%. All right, so the problem with this in the past is you would do this training and it would go better, and then you would lose somebody. And to that degree, the effect was diluted. You'd hire a new person and the OM wasn't going to sit down again for 4 hours. Maybe they would, but where are they going to find the time? And this would happen again and again and again. So you lose this knowledge. So here's what we're going to do a little bit differently. First thing we're going to do is we're going to record the meeting. Now, of course, if you're recording it, and this is where, you have to know what's legal or not in your state. When you're recording people, you may have to get everybody's permission, not just one person's permission. Most of the time I found that team members are not adverse to this. Can I record this meeting or can I video this meeting where I go over how to answer the phones? Let's say I'm the office manager. Most people will be fine and they're willing to do it. All right, so how am I going to record this meeting? I could use something as simple as an iPhone, or a Samsung. I don't have a Samsung. I haven't one for years, so I don't know how it works. But let's say I'd use an iPhone. I could video it, in which case I can get a $30 tripod from Amazon that I can hook it up to, and I can get a couple of Bluetooth microphones that hook right up to my iPhone, and I put a mic on me and maybe one of the employees, pass it around as they have questions, right? Or I could just record the audio associated with it. The nice thing about video is people can watch it later and see real life examples. If I'm just not set up for that, I could audio record it. Now, how can I audio record it? I can use an audio recorder on my iPhone. There's an app for it you can download, and you just press record and you make sure it's recording everybody. It's very simple. Again, get their permission. Or you can use a device like Applaud. I'll put a link to it on the episode webpage. I have one. I don't use it as much as you might suspect. In a lot of cases, I just use my iPhone and I'm just recording. You could also use fancier stuff like we use for the podcast, where we have a device that has a memory card in it called a Tascam. And then you got to get fancy mics. But look, the point I'm making is you're going to record this thing. It doesn't matter how you record it as long as it is, you can hear it. It's audible. So you can literally grab your iPhone, use a little audio recorder. It's a cheap little app that comes with your iPhone that looks like an old cassette recorder. You press record and you start recording. So now we're going to record our entire meeting. It might be 2 hours long as I'm training all the employees on how to answer the phone. And I'm even role playing during the meeting. I'm being a patient, or I'm being the receptionist, and the front desk is being a patient, and I'm showing them how I would expertly handle that call in order to get a conversion. All right, so now we've recorded this. So all we end up with at the end of this is we end up with an audio file on my iPhone, which isn't going to do anybody all that much good. We need to do something with this. Well, now we need to transcribe this audio file. Okay, so a couple issues are going to happen here. If I'm using a memory card, this is easier because then I can just take that memory card and bring it over, like the ones that have in cameras, and put it into my PC. Or another thing to keep in mind, I could have recorded this entire meeting on my laptop or my PC, in which case that makes life a lot easier. Or if I recorded it on my iPhone, I'm going to save it to the iCloud because this is probably a big file. And then I'm going to transfer it from my iCloud into software that's going to transcribe this meeting. Now, if you're using Applaud will transcribe. But again, I'm going to advise that, look, I don't want to have you laden with technology. Let's keep this real simple. Let's say I'm just using my iPhone. There is a program I'm going to recommend that you use for transcription. It's a program called Descript. Literally just like that, DESCIRPT.com. I'll put a link to it on the episode webpage. The membership for Descript is $24 a month or $288 a year. Now, Descript has a lot of different features. I love the program. Number one, its transcriptions are pretty dead on. But Descript also works with video. So you can, if you do any type of social media for your practice, TikTok videos or videos for Facebook or videos for Instagram, Descript will take a video, has editing capacity in there to the point where it'll even have there's things where it can have you look at camera the whole time. So you don't have a person looking off camera, has basic video editing components. It also has an AI component that will get rid of all the filler words, the ums and the ers and things like this. It's super cool. It will also make you shorts. So if you record a 5-minute video on something and you want to make little quick shorts you can throw up on TikTok or whatever, it'll record shorts, and the shorts are actually really good. So it's worth checking out just for social media alone. But that's not why we're using it in this case. In this case, we're just using it to get a really good transcript. Obviously, I wouldn't pay this just for transcription software. I like the social media component too, so I think it's cool for both. But the bottom line is I need a transcript. So it transcribes my meeting. I take the file, I drop it into Descript. It transcribes my meeting. This is the meeting I've had with the staff on how to answer the phones in the practice. I'm then going to have to turn this into a policy somehow, right? I need a policy that people can read later in order to be able to apply it. If I lose one of these employees and I hire a new one, I need to be able to give them something to read in order to train them. All right, so how am I going to get my policy written? I could go through the transcript and try to write a policy that's going to take me hours. Or I'm going to use another AI solution that pretty much everybody's familiar with, which is ChatGPT. But I'm going to use the paid version. I'm going to spend $20 a month on ChatGPT. Now, I started using ChatGPT when it first came out. Wasn't overly impressed, because there was all the excitement about AI. And then kind of walked away from a bit, then finally came back as more and more stuff's gone on with it. And you don't have to use ChatGPT. You can use it. There's competitive products like Perplexity and other things. You can do research yourself. And one thing to keep in mind whenever you use an AI platform is in the case of ChatGPT, it's open, meaning that your data does make it back to the company that owns ChatGPT. And I don't know if it's shared in any way. So they can always correct me on this. So the problem is you don't want to put anything in there that's specifically sensitive to your practice or, HIPAA and things like this. You want to make sure that you cover your bases there. But writing basic policy for the practice, in my opinion at least, I'm not a lawyer, like how to answer the phones and stuff, is really not a big deal. I use it all the time. But now, if you're going to use this, there's a couple things that you have to keep in mind. If I just drop that transcript into ChatGPT and tell it to write me a policy, I don't know what I'm really going to come out with. If you want to think with ChatGPT as anything, think of it as like a kid that always follows instructions. It's like every parent's dream, right? But it always follows instructions, and you can always tweak the instructions as you go. So what you're going to want to create is something called a profile, like a manual writing profile in this case, or policy writing profile. The platform will actually help you create one. So you could say, look, I want to write policy for my practice. I'm a dentist and I want this policy to be friendly and accessible and understandable. And I want it to be very detailed, and you can give it more specifics. For instance, if we have examples of a patient interaction, like how to handle a specific kind of phone call, like the training that we just did with our front desk staff, you want to have it actually reprint scripts so people can see examples of this in the policy. And then it will create a profile for you, and you can always tweak the profile as you go. And what I have a couple of downloads for you in this episode. I have an example of a manual writing profile that you can look at. You can get it by downloading it at the link on the episode webpage, along with a couple other downloads I'm going to tell you about. Now, if you don't like, so then you upload your transcript. It uses that profile you've created and it spits out a policy. Now, if you don't like it, you could ask for it to modify it in certain ways. Maybe you didn't like the amount of detail it used. You can ask it to be more detailed. Maybe you didn't like the format. You can say, I want this at the top. It'll change the format. It'll do all of these things. And there are other tools you can use, AI tools for writing. Again, what I had heard, and I don't know if this is current or not, I'm sure someone can correct me on it, is I know that at one point Google was not happy with just AI generated content from a search perspective. And, to be truthful, if you're using one of these these AI platforms for creative writing, I'm not super impressed with the creative writing I've seen from it. But manual writing or, marketing copy, things like this are pretty good. And you can always tweak it afterwards to reduce the AI involvement to make it exactly what you want. So let's say you've created a manual writing profile. And now you go, good, here's a transcript of a meeting that my office manager had with my staff on how to handle different types of new patient phone calls for new patient conversion. Could you please use this profile to create a policy based off of this? And, I'm being nice to AI because eventually they'll be our overlords, right? I'm kidding. Anyway, so you then upload the transcript and then it spits out a policy. And if you don't like it, if there's points that are missing or you feel like there are points that need to be changed, you just type it into the conversation and then it corrects the policy. All of this happens in a matter of seconds. Okay, in a matter of seconds. So keep in mind what we've done thus far. We've recorded a meeting, and it's a meeting we would have had anyway to train our staff, but we've recorded it. Of course, we got everybody's permission. We've then transcribed it, which took a matter of minutes. We've now uploaded it into an AI platform who then spits back a usable policy that we can use to train future staff members, as well as to have the current staff members that we have refer back to it to then, how am I supposed to handle that kind of call again? And they just look right there and they can handle it. It's a super, super cool system. And I'm going to give you an example of this. I didn't want to put too much reading in here, otherwise this becomes difficult. But let's say you wanted to create a policy for your office hours. So I did a little experiment so you could see this, and it uses the policy writing profile that I created that you can download. But here's a recording I made. I'm going to read the recording I made and then show you the policy that came out as a result of this. So here it is. So this is a recording for a policy regarding office hours at our practice. The name of the practice is ABC Dental. My name is John Smith, DDS. I'm the author of the policy. It's important that every team member is aware of the practice's hours and that they're always here on time, because it's very difficult for the group to operate as a team if anyone is missing. So being on time is very important, especially since it's important that we're all here at the same time in order to maximize patient care. As you can see, I'm just taking an interjection from the reading here. This was very off the cuff. I'm just reading this and having it transcribed, right? All right, let me continue. The patient hours of the practice, we're open for 4.5 days a week, are as follows. Monday from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., and Friday from 8 a.m. to noon. We take lunch every day at noon, except on Friday, because we're only open half a day. Employees are expected to arrive at least a half hour prior to patient hours. In some cases, it may be earlier depending on their position to ensure that we're ready for patient care that day. It's also expected that the employees may have to stay at least 15 minutes to 30 minutes after patient hours that day to clean up their areas and get everything prepped and ensure that we're ready for patient care the following day. We are closed every national holiday, and there may be other days that the practice will be closed, which we would let the team know about well in advance. We have 2 meetings on a regular basis. One is every day and one is once a week. The first meeting is our morning production meeting. This is at 7:45 every morning. The next meeting we do is our weekly staff meeting, which is held on Mondays at 8 a.m., which is why we start at 8:30 a.m. with patients on Monday. Again, it's important that we abide by these hours and follow them to ensure that we can take the best care of our patients. All right, so that was just me reading off the cuff as an example for this podcast. Of course, we've used this to write more involved stuff, but I don't want to have to read all that to you over a podcast. So using the manual writing profile or the policy writing profile, I then uploaded that transcript to ChatGPT and asked it to generate a policy. So here's the policy. Office hours and attendance for ABC Dental. Author John Smith, DDS. Purpose. At ABC Dental, we strive to deliver the best possible care to our patients, and a big part of that is ensuring we're all working together smoothly. This policy outlines our hours, attendance expectations, and team meeting schedules so everyone knows when they're needed and can plan accordingly. Scope. This policy is for all members of the ABC Dental team, whether you're at the front desk, assisting in the operatory, or providing patient care. Office hours for patients, Monday, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., Friday, 8 a.m. to noon. No lunch break. Lunch break, Monday through Thursday, 12 p.m. to 12:30 p.m. Friday, since it's a shorter day, we don't take a lunch break. Employee attendance. Arrival time. To ensure that we're all set to welcome our patients, please arrive at least 30 minutes prior to patient hours beginning. This gives us time to prepare the office and get everything ready for the day. Depending on your role, you might need to arrive a bit earlier. Your manager will let you know if that's the case. Departure time. At the end of the day, you may be required to stay for at least 15 to 30 minutes beyond patient hours to tidy up, finish any necessary paperwork, and make sure your area is prepped for the next day. This helps us all start the next day fresh and ready to go. Holiday and special closures. National holidays will be closed on all national holidays. Now, funny thing about this, I know I'm kind of, digressing, but I didn't really, we have federal holidays in the United States, and certain ones people work and certain ones they don't. For instance, on Columbus Day, banks are closed, but people go to work, whereas on Labor Day, we're all off. So I didn't know quite what to call them. So obviously I would tweak this after I downloaded it. All right, let me keep going. Additional closures. If there are any extra days off, we'll let you know well in advance so you can plan accordingly. Meeting schedule. Morning production meeting. Time 7:45 p.m. or a.m. every day. Purpose. These quick morning huddles help us review the day's schedule and make sure we're all on the same page. It's a great way to start the day. Weekly staff meeting. Time Monday at 8 a.m. Note, since we meet on Monday mornings, patient hours start at 8:30 a.m. that day, giving us a bit of extra time to discuss important topics as a team. Compliance. We know how important it is for everyone to be on time and ready to work, so we ask that you follow these guidelines closely. If something comes up and you need to adjust your schedule, just give the office manager or Dr. Smith a heads up. We're here to help. Conclusion. By following these guidelines, we can ensure that ABC Dental runs smoothly, and together we can continue providing top-notch care to our patients. Your punctuality and dedication to make all the difference, and we appreciate everything you do to keep our practice running like clockwork. All right, so I did my initial recording where I just and obviously, look, I would tweak the heck out of this policy. There's a number of things that I would probably change, like the point where it talks about if they want to change their schedule, just giving us a heads up. I have a little bit more of a formal way of doing that, and I would clarify the whole holidays issue. But the point I was trying to make here was I spent 2 minutes just randomly recording something talking about office hours. I then threw it into the GPT platform using my manual or my policy writing profile, and that's what it spat out in 10 seconds. So you can imagine if you were to do something where you're training your front desk employees, like the example I gave you earlier. I'll say it again, Matt, sorry. So you can imagine if you were to train your front desk employees using the example I did earlier, it would spit out this super detailed policy. And if I don't like what it spat out or it's not detailed enough, I ask it for more detail. And any changes I make, I ask to add to the profile for future policies. Now, a couple other things on this profile concept. So the first thing I would do is if you're going to write a profile on how you want your policies written, I would save it in addition as a Word or a Google Doc so you can always upload it, because sometimes the platform likes to get a bit cheeky and add its own ideas on what should be in your policies. The other thing is if you're really going to dedicate yourself to doing this, you're using a platform like GPT and you're having meetings and you're turning this into policy, you can also, if you look in ChatGPT on the upper left-hand side, they'll have different types of GPTs. Marketing GPT, copywriting GPT, math. They cover just about every area, finance, etc., and they specialize in those areas, and they're specific platforms built by others. You can create your own GPT for policy writing and give it the entire profile, and that's what you exclusively use it for. And it's up in your left-hand corner. You just click your policy GPT when you want to generate policy. I didn't want to get too crazy on this because, number one, it's a podcast. I can't show you a screen share. But the things I'm describing to you are not complex at all. They're actually very easy to use. So the beauty of this is you're going to have to do meetings for training and things like this anyway. By doing this, you can actually turn those meetings into policy that's then usable. After it generates a policy, you just click a button, you copy the text. It's right there at the end of the text. It just spits out. You drop it into a Google or a Word doc. You save it as that policy, and you can issue it to your staff. It makes policy generation a breeze. And like I've said, I've used it for all types of things. I don't recommend it for creative writing, but I have used it. I've had to go in and do a lot of edits afterwards, but you can use this for anything and tweak it as you go so it spits out exactly what you want. And it is truly a game changer. It makes generating procedures in your practice that are specific to your practice very, very easy. And what's cool about it is, let's say I provide you a policy manual with all of the basics on how to run a dental practice, and you need that extra 15, 20% that is customized to your office. This makes it easy. You could have that done in a matter of days. Then you have effective training materials for your practice. And the bonus is if you video these meetings, You can use those videos later on top of the policies specific to your practice. I'm not talking about general stuff that you could get trained on by others, right? But stuff that's specific to your office, you have all of your training materials handy. So if you lose an employee, yeah, it's not fun, but getting the new one up and running isn't a world-ending event. It's not difficult to do, is my point. Now, as far as training goes, a couple last points on this. Just handing somebody a policy isn't training, because that doesn't ensure that A, they actually understand it, and B, that they can actually apply it. So let's say I did that meeting with the employees where we went over how to handle the phones and whatnot. Well, now I generate a policy as a result of it. The next thing I'm going to generate are some role-playing exercises where I can actually make sure they can do it. So here I am, the manager. Good. Show me how you'd handle a shopper call. Good. Show me how you'd handle a patient asking if we accept their plan and we don't. Great. Now show me what you do with a shopper. And you have them apply the policy, and they drill it until they can do it without thinking about it. Then when those phone calls come in, it becomes easy for them to deal with. And then you obviously, in addition to drilling them, you'd want to, apprentice them a bit too. You'd want to make sure that they can actually do it and pull it off, right? Because that's how you train people. But this takes, the bulk of having to do and redo and redo and redo certain types of training over and over again, rather than just having something someone could read or watch. This makes this a breeze. Anyway, so a little bit of a different episode this week, but it was something that I used. I thought it would be helpful, and it's something that's definitely a big hole or problem in a lot of dental practices. I have on the episode webpage, you can download that sample policy that I read to you. You can also download the policy writing profile, so you'll see how it was generated based on what I read into the recorder. As far as the programs that I mentioned, I'll put a link to Descript on the episode webpage. I have no financial relationship or any business relationship other than being a subscriber. So beyond the fact that I really like it, so that's also cool. I'll put a link to Descript so you can find out more about it, as well as a link to the paid version of ChatGPT. If you want to check it out, you can also check out other AI platforms as you like. Again, a bit of a different episode. I do hope it helps. Start doing it and have fun with it. You will be surprised at how easy this makes your life. Otherwise, if you want to know more about MGE, you can find us online at mgeonline.com or call us at 800-640-1140. Folks, have a great week, and we'll see you at the next episode.